Good morning, Olivia.
We're matching.
Huh. Funny how that works out.
Yeah, this is kind of the color.
Yeah. For those of you who may be listening, Olivia, you have a very specific name, I feel like, for this color.
Oh, burgundy.
Burgundy. See, I think of it as like a maroon wine.
Yep. Those are all accurate. 100%.
Anyway, so if you're listening versus watching, Olivia and I have a tendency to show up in this burgundy wine color without planning ahead of time. My slippers are also the same color.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got you those slippers. So that would explain that right there. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the MixTape, brought to you by The Parent Trip, because parenting's a trip. We're here to talk about all things related to parenting. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. You can also find us on Patreon. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, all that jazz. It's just going to make your life easier to find more of us.
Yeah. I mean, you can write it in your planner that we post new MixTape episodes on the first and third Wednesday of every month, if you are into planners like Olivia and I are. But it's a little bit easier if you just subscribe and your phone tells you for you.
Truth.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about the topic we're doing today, Sarah.
It's going to be so fun.
Sarah and I today are going to be talking about old wives' tales.
Oh my gosh.
There's so many.
There's so many. Like, I don't even know how we're going to pick.
So, knowing the two of us, Sarah's an IBCLC. I'm a labor doula. I know the ones that I'm thinking about have to do with labor. I'm sure the ones you're thinking about have to do with milk making.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so basically old wives' tales are those pieces of like kind of cultural knowledge that float around. The first one that I think most people think of is the idea of like eating spicy food to induce labor. That's an old wives' tale. That people are like, I got to get this baby out. Give me Thai food. And it's like, where did we hear that? Where's the first place you heard that? Where did that come from? Is there data behind it? So that's kind of what we're talking about today, is just like all those weird little things that kind of float around, and like how much we have anecdotally or data. I don't know how much data you have, Sarah. I don't have a ton of data for the ones I want to talk about.
Yeah.
But like in our professions, in our work, how much do we see those? How much do we live by them? That kind of thing.
And I think it's safe to say that like just because something doesn't have data doesn't mean it's not true. I mean, it can mean that for sure, but like maybe it just hasn't been studied.
Right.
Super
I'm
possible.
also going to go ahead and say I was at a birth this weekend, and my client was being monitored on her belly, and she just kept on saying, this feels like such outdated technology. This feels like such outdated technology. And I was like, yeah, it is. She was like, why is that? And I said, because the people monitoring the people and the people being monitored are generally all female bodies.
Yeah.
And nobody puts money towards female bodies.
And that's like, even if there's money to be made, right? So like if there's money to be made on a medication, they're more likely to pay for studies to make sure they can sell it. But a lot of times in the past, those studies didn't even include women's bodies.
Yeah.
But if there's no money to be made, like with lactation, right? If a parent is about to make their own milk and not have to buy food for their baby, who wants to study that? No one's going to make money off that.
Right. Exactly. There's nobody to sponsor it. There's nothing. Yeah, exactly. We could get me screaming right now about preeclampsia, because this is the thing I always tell people is I'm like, preeclampsia, it's like the 1900s where we don't know what causes it or what happens because of it, because no one has put money towards figuring it out. It's fine. It's 2021. We still don't know what causes preeclampsia. I'm okay with it, clearly.
Someone put the money in.
Yeah. If you're a huge philanthropist watching the MixTape right now, go to our Patreon and then start a study. Actually, reverse order. Start a study to solve preeclampsia and then go to our Patreon. That was rude of me. That was me being rude.
I mean, we're doing so, just a little self-promotion for everybody for a minute. The Parent Trip is very intentionally, speaking of the Patreon, a free service. This MixTape episode, all the previous ones, all of our events that we have 3 times a year, and our informational panels, those are all free, and that's super intentional. So the Patreon is there so that you can help support, keep it free for everybody, because we think it's really important that everyone has access, not just people who can pay for event tickets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? What are we doing?
Okay, so I have a labor old wives' tale that I want to throw at you.
Oh, yeah. Hit me.
Full moon.
Oh my God. So true. It's so true. Thank you for bringing it up. It was on my list to talk about. So there's this, what Sarah is referring to is that there is this idea out there that the full moon causes people to go into labor. And I do not have data evidence for this. Maybe it exists. If it exists and you're the person who's studying full moon's effect on laboring bodies, please link your data in the comments. But here's what I have to say about it is that I had heard the full moon affected things. I had seen it semi-anecdotally in my private practice before I worked at the hospital. And then I worked at the hospital, and there is no denying that the full moon affects everything, not just people going into labor. Like our unit was crazy during the full moon. The emergency room was crazy during the full moon. Like it would always be the kind of thing where I would be halfway through an overnight shift and I would be like, what the hell is going on? And I would look outside and be like, oh, there's a full moon outside. Like I didn't even keep track in the month. It was like just every time that we had a very busy night, it was a full moon.
Yeah.
So
I will say for my births, the full moon did nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But also I used to work in a classroom and I would have the same experience where I'd be like, what is happening right now?
Right. With all these little kids. And this is the thing. This is why it affects laboring people, little kids, people who end up in the ER. Like, this is the reason why, is because we all already accept that the moon has an effect on the oceans, causes the tides. The oceans are made of water, and we are huge sacks of water and electrical impulses walking around. So the moon has effect on our sacks of water. So yes, I 100% believe that the full moon affects. And like I lived that at the end of January. We had a full moon and I had 3 births in 4 days. Like boom, boom, boom. Everybody's body was like, okay, time to have a baby.
And this is the part that gets me is I have totally tried to look up scientific evidence on this before. Science does not support our experience. It does not support the experience of ER nurses, labor and delivery, doula and nurses. It doesn't like teachers, everyone who says this is a thing, science doesn't support it. Like they've researched it a little.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I don't know. And maybe I was going to say, maybe it's that we're paying more attention. Maybe we like see the full moon and then we pay attention and we're like, oh, this was a crazy night. But that wasn't my experience when I worked at the hospital. Mm-mm. When I worked on the labor and delivery floor at Providence St. V's, it was the opposite. I would be like, this is a crazy night. Oh, it's a full moon.
Oh, this reminds me. So this is another one that is not supported by science for certain, but that talk to parents and teachers and try to convince them otherwise. Sugar and kids' behavior.
That one's not supported by science?
Yeah, isn't that weird?
No, that's wrong.
I know.
Sorry. No. I mean, I'm not a parent, but I was a nanny for a long time and no way.
Mm-hmm. I'll see if I can find some links to send you. It's totally been like disproven. And I'm like, y'all are nuts.
Yeah, no. I'm going to put you researchers in a building with 2 3-year-olds.
Y'all can go be the teachers the day after Halloween at elementary school.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't understand that one.
Here's the other thing I want to say before we walk away from the full moon is that in line with the full moon, there are people who believe, again, anecdotally, that drastic changes in barometric pressure affect the bag of waters. So what I'm talking about is you get like a weird fog rolling in. You get like a random storm that just happens. Like all of a sudden there's a lightning storm and the air gets really dry. Or so like the fog makes it really wet. The lightning makes it dry. Like when you all of a sudden get just like a random like change in your climate, there are many L&D nurses who swear by the fact that it just makes bags of waters pop.
That makes so much sense to me, and I've never thought about it.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's an old wives' tale because it's not like it's like in the social consciousness the way the full moon is. but definitely something I hear people talk about.
Yeah. Do you have another one?
Another labor one? Definitely, I always talk to people at the end of their pregnancies about the spicy food thing. People are always like, oh my God, get this baby out of me. I guess I just need to be eating spicy foods all the time. And the thing I tell people is I'm like, actually, I wouldn't recommend it. And the reason for that is because if you do get yourself into labor, you're likely to either have you're going to lose that food one way or another, whether you're going to be throwing it up or it's leaving the other end. Like it's going to be exiting your body to make space for that baby. And if it's really spicy, that could be ouchy, whichever way it goes, right? Yeah. So I actually don't recommend that my clients eat spicy food to bring babies into this world. The things that I do tell people is I'm like, the science backs up that there are essentially two like scientifically proven things you can do to help bring a baby here. And the first one is heterosexual penetrative sex to completion on the part of both parties. And that's because in male semen, there's a chemical called prostaglandins that's a cervical ripener. And when a woman has an orgasm, she's releasing oxytocin in her body, which is what creates contractions. So that's item number one. Most of my clients, I would say 70% of my clients are like, next, please.
Yeah.
9 months pregnant. No, thank you. And then the other one's movement. So when you hear stuff like eating spicy foods and, like there's like people say like, do a handstand or do this or do that. Like definitely movement, sex has all the hormonal elements. And then there are some very few studies that have done work on the fact that evening primrose oil and actually dates, eating up to 6 dates a day, release the same hormones in your body that help with cervical ripening that you might get from like prostaglandins. So that's pretty much it when it comes to science around helping labor get started.
So I feel like I want to point out like this is why you hire a labor doula, because me over here as a lactation and consultant and parent, I'm like, well, why not eat the spicy food? Like I wanted spicy Thai food. Absolutely. Like, why not? Like, what's it gonna hurt? Those are some really good reasons.
That's what I tell people when they ask me if they should eat when their early labor starts, is I'm always like, yes, please eat. Your body is about to run a marathon. You need nutrition. Just don't eat anything that would hurt you to throw up. So like, you just don't want anything super vinegary, citrusy, like whatever it is, right? There's no saying you will throw up, but there's also no saying you won't. So yeah. Yeah. What about you? Tell me some. I can think of one that I talk to people about lactation, but
throw it at me.
Talk to me about cabbage leaves.
Oh, real. Totally real. So cabbage leaves are something that's recommended to folks who are dealing with engorgement or weaning. It's like this huge joke, right? You peel it off and you just put it over your breast, and it's supposed to help dry you up. I don't think we understand all of the science behind it. But there is definitely some chemical stuff going on in the cabbage itself that I believe does do that. On top of that, though, you also are normally pulling that cabbage leaf out of the fridge. So you're putting something cold there, which is good for inflammation.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to put a cabbage leaf, you could totally do some ice packs and some other things that are good for inflammation.
Here's my question for you, Sarah. Have you ever made sauerkraut?
I have.
Okay, so you know how when you make sauerkraut, you pretty much like chop up a bunch of cabbage and push it down to the very bottom of a jar, and then you put like a little bit of whatever salt on it, and it makes its own, how sauerkraut's all juicy, it makes its own juice.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it like pulls all of the water from itself, right? So that's the way I describe it to my clients when I suggest to them that they get cabbage and keep it in there. I'm like, it's like essentially pulling those juices out of your, like the extra fluids out of your breast. Like when you make sauerkraut, which I've had many clients then say, is there a market for breastfeeding sauerkraut? Like, here's cabbage that was in my bra. And I was like, I'm sure it's on Craigslist somewhere.
Yeah, right. It's like an kind of thing. I actually stumbled on an article the other day because someone was asking me about it. And it was about cabbage leaves and hemorrhoids, which is like totally something that pregnant people and new postpartum parents deal with. And I need to like deep dive on it a little more, but it wasn't that you go put a cabbage leaf on your butt. It was the idea that you like
It's 100% what I thought. I was like, okay, so we're making a little cabbage.
No, I think the idea is that you like roll it out and like get the juices out of it, and that those juices have these properties that are like anti-inflammatory. So if anyone wants to go down a deep rabbit hole there's some stuff for you, but it's totally a true one.
DM Opus Lactation and talk to her about cabbage and hemorrhoids.
Yeah. Okay, so I have one.
Yeah.
The size of your breasts impacts the way, like how much milk you make.
I mean, you're the lactation consultant, but I say no.
Absolutely not. 100% not. It is all so individualized. People can have large breasts and have insufficient milk. People can have small breasts and have oversupply. Nothing to do with it. You can have one breast removed for surgery and you can feed your baby entirely on one side. You can have twins and triplets and feed them entirely on your two breasts.
Yes. You can tandem feed your toddler and your newborn on separate breasts and have totally different milk coming out of each breast.
This is totally true.
The only thing that I have heard of, so tell me if this is true, Sarah, is that the only thing like surgery adjustment wise that can sometimes affect your ability to make milk is not actually breast augmentation, but it's when you do breast reduction, right? So
I mean, anytime that you have surgery going on, there's a risk of severing either ducts or nerves. And those can both really impact milk supply. But they don't have to. So a lot of it just depends on the type of surgery you get and where the incisions are and how your body heals, all that kind of stuff. But again, it has nothing to do with the tissue that you were born with.
Yeah. Totally. Here's a question. I don't know if this is an old wives' tale. This is like a thing I think people hear all the time, is that they have to adjust their diet as soon as their baby is born to make their, like they have to eat really plain food in order to make their milk palatable to their baby.
Nope. There are certainly cases of like intolerances. If there is any history of like dairy intolerance in your life, I highly suggest even while you're pregnant, cutting it out because it can take time to get through your system. But for the most part, like eat the spicy food, eat the garlic, eat the broccoli, like eat all the things. Some of that, there's theories around that making kids more open to those kinds of foods in the future. I mean, that's kind of an old wives' tale that I am on the fence about.
Can I insert anecdotally something here?
Yeah.
So the reason why I brought it up was because back before Corona, part of my practice was that for my prenatals, I would cook one meal for my clients and they would cook one meal for me. And that was how we would do our prenatal appointments. So one time I was making food for someone, maybe they were postpartum already. Anyway, I was making lasagna for someone. I was talking to my mom about it. My mom was like, "You can't make lasagna for someone with a new baby." And I was like, "Why?" And she said, "Because babies can't handle tomatoes. Like it's too acidic for them. They can't handle, their bellies can't handle the tomatoes." And I was like, "Where did you get this information?" And she was like, when I was breastfeeding you, anytime I had tomatoes, you would lose it. You couldn't handle it. And I was like, "Mom, I didn't like tomatoes until I was 24. Like maybe that was just me. Yeah. Maybe that's not babies. Maybe I just didn't like tomatoes."
And I think that's a really important point, right? Like there's this we like to have cut and dry rules for things. We like to say, here's the formula, how we make this all work. And I'm going to follow every rule and then it's going to be great. But the truth is that your body is very different from your partner's body, from your best friend's body. Everyone has different tastes, metabolisms, all these different things. So your baby's the same way. They came from you, but they're not going to be a duplicate of you in any way. And so a big part of it is throwing the need to have rules out the window, which is really hard. It's really hard, and I recognize that. But focusing that energy instead on being in tune with your baby, because that's really, really wonderful that your mom noticed that, right? That she was able to be in tune enough with what was going on in your lives that she noticed, oh, when I eat tomatoes, Olivia reacts. Versus I just have a really fussy baby. Why won't she stop crying?
Right. Totally. Yeah.
So, spending that energy to be just a little, focused, like, man, she's been really fussy in the evenings specifically, which that's not unusual.
Right.
But, maybe that's when you have tomatoes. You don't have them any other meal. If we're just going to use that as the example, maybe you like to have a lot of tomato-based dinners.
Yeah.
And so using that time and that energy to evaluate that.
Yeah. I've got an old wives' tale that I think is not true.
Okay.
A lot of times you'll hear people say that the way that you are carrying determines the gender of your baby. So if that belly is high, if that belly is out, that belly is low, that means a boy or a girl. I don't actually even know which way they think it is because it's just not true. So, but yeah, I think I've heard a lot of people say, oh, I'm carrying this baby differently. Therefore, my last one was a boy and this one's a girl. I would say actually that's almost more accurate than the idea of where you're carrying is if you're having a really different pregnancy, sometimes that can be a sign that you're carrying a different gender. I know someone who has had 6 children, 3 of whom were boys, and she had really intense postpartum depression with all 3 boys and not at all with her girls.
Interesting.
So there are hormones that are developed in your body. There are things that we do not understand. So if you are the type of person who you end up having like a good database of your own kids to pull from, not just like I have 1 boy and 1 girl, this is what I've seen, but like I have 6 kids and 3 of them are boys. This is what I've learned. It can be really interesting to see, like I had a lot of morning sickness with all my girls, or I had this, or I had that, right? But the way that you carry does not determine the gender or is not an indicator of gender.
I craved sweets during pregnancy for the first time with my 1 boy.
Mm-hmm. I had a friend who was vegan through all of her pregnancies, except for her 1 boy. She couldn't do it. She had to have meat.
Interesting. I was thinking when you were talking about the positioning, I'm hoping some of our chiropractor and physical therapy friends will chime in because I feel like from the research that I've done and the stuff on my own body that I've done, I think a lot of times that positioning, like the torpedo belly versus the saggy belly and all this kind of different stuff has a lot more to do with like your body frame and your pelvic tilt and your core muscles and that kind of stuff. Maybe with your first baby, it was up really high and you were in good alignment and had good core strength. And then maybe post baby, it's really hard to get that core muscle stuff back the way it was before after baby. I remember just being blown away after giving birth to my first kid at how little strength I had in my core. And I think most of it is probably just that you're exhausted. It's not like it's gone forever because you've just been working so hard. But I just remember being like, I cannot move with my core. What is happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. The thing I will tell you, talking about incorporating our provider friends, is that I know a lot of acupuncturists who say that they can very easily determine your baby's gender by your pulse in your body following Chinese medicine techniques. I do not know what they are. I'm not an acupuncturist. But everyone I know who has had their acupuncturist guess the gender of their baby has been right.
Interesting. I've definitely heard the pulse one before, or like heartbeat rate.
Mm-hmm. I tried to do that when I worked at St. V's. We had a long night that was not that busy, and one of the nurses was pregnant. And so we spent a long time sitting quietly in the dark with my hands on both of her wrists, trying to guess which pulse was faster so that I could tell her if she's having a boy or a girl. I did not know what I was doing. I apologize, acupuncturist.
I love it. I have another lactation one around food, actually.
Yeah.
So pretty much anytime you go into a forum where they're talking about milk supply, you're going to hear oatmeal, brewer's yeast, blue Gatorade. The list is incredibly long.
Mm-hmm.
Of all these foods that folks claim really supported their supply. And I would like to say there was nothing magical in blue Gatorade. Unfortunately, that would be real convenient, right?
Yeah.
For Gatorade. However, I think it's really important that we all stay hydrated. I think it's really important that we all have electrolytes. I think, oats have been used for centuries to support lactation. So I'm certainly not going to discount that, honestly, but I would not be surprised if the majority of that support and that benefit comes more from the fact that you're eating a really nourishing, dense meal in the morning rather than having like a bowl of cereal, or maybe you're like snacking on something small or just a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
um, there's all this stuff around lactation cookies. Again, I don't think they actually have a magical lactation boost in them. But you're eating regular snacks because they're appealing. A lot of times you're throwing nutrient dense stuff in there because you don't want to feel super guilty eating cookies all the time.
Right. So it's got other, yeah. I will tell you that one of the things that I talk to my clients about when they talk about having family visit postpartum, they're always like, I don't know what I'm going to ask them to do. How are they going to help me? One of the things I always say is I'm like, assign one of your parents, sister, friend, whoever it is who's visiting you, the job of being in charge of your breakfast in the morning. Like if you're going to get up at 5:30 and feed the baby, they can get up with you at 5:30. You feed the baby, they put the baby back down, and then they're in charge of starting the coffee, making a hearty breakfast, all this stuff, so that when you do get up later, you have nutrition to start your day.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Yeah. So whenever you see someone out on Facebook or wherever touting a magical, I ate or drank this thing to make my supply go through the roof, take it with a grain of salt. I mean, really, it's about attending to your nutrition, specifically you. So maybe that person who drank Gatorade was really deficient in electrolytes and their body needed to have that back in their body to be able to function correctly and make milk. So maybe it really did do that for them. I really don't want to discount that experience because enough people have said it, honestly. Like, I feel like there's probably something to it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it's a lactation specific thing. I think it's a body health and hydration and maybe electrolytes kind of thing.
Yeah. I always tell my clients that every time they breastfeed, they should drink a big glass of water while they breastfeed just to keep hydration going. But I know that there are some people who think water is boring and have a hard time drinking that much straight water, in which case, like, buy up some Gatorade, like for sure. Let's keep you hydrated.
Yeah. I was always really into ice water that made it easier for me to drink. Or now they make if you look in which section of the store is that in? It's not just like sports, right? It's like the electrolyte tabs and different things that there's so many options now.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. This is one that I have not seen any anecdotal evidence for, and it's a bummer because I think it's the thing that everybody makes them feel better about. But the correlation between acid reflux and hair. Yeah, there's a big idea out there that if you have a lot of acid reflux through your pregnancy, it's because your baby has a lot of hair. I think that it makes people feel better while they're dealing with their acid reflux to be like, well, at least I'm going to get this baby with these flowing locks. I haven't seen any correlation for that. I totally see how it helps people handle their acid reflux. But yeah, I haven't seen any correlation for that. If I just said that and that's making you want to weep, the thing I'll tell you is try putting a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in some water and drinking that before bed. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but actually having the additional acid in your belly tricks your belly into not making more, right? So you put some acid in so that it doesn't make more. I'm sorry. I hope your baby has the amount of hair that you want it to.
Well, and baby hair is so funny because even if they have lots of hair, most of the time they lose a bunch of it or they end up with like a bald patch in various spots.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yep. What else? Do you have another one?
I totally did. What was it?
Just on the provider train, I'll jump in with this thought. It's not really an old wives' tale, but I think that sometimes people feel like if their baby has a preference, you were talking about those bald spots. If their baby has a preference for side, like your baby only wants to latch on one side, or your baby's always turning their head this way, I think a lot of people feel like that's just that's just it. Like my baby just has a preference that way. Babies go through a lot to come out of the birth canal. They have to do a big journey and they get really squished. So sometimes they just need an adjustment too. So that's where infant craniosacral therapy can come in, is releasing those tight muscles in your baby's neck so they can latch on both sides and not just have a big bald patch on one side of their head.
Yeah. I feel like I can't think of like an actual phrase for it, but I feel like there's got to be something out there about the tandem nursing you were talking about earlier, like that you can't nurse both a baby and an older sibling. You totally can. Our bodies are really amazing. You don't have to do just one side for each. My understanding is that the body will support the milk mostly for the baby versus the toddler. And either way, they're getting. So colostrum is like a really intense nutrient milk, right? And then you shift into the next form. But then toddler milk is actually kind of more nutrient dense as well. Like there's kind of this swing both ways. So if you have an older child and an infant, it's more matched than you might think.
Oh, interesting. What else?
I feel like I had another labor one.
There's a lot. If you have a old wives' tale that you found was very true in your experience, or something that, you know, changed your pregnancy or your postpartum time when you heard it, we'd love to hear about it. So please go ahead and throw it in the comments, and we'll write back and tell you whether or not we think that that's true.
Yeah. And if you think we're full of crap, you can tell us that too.
Yeah. Definitely.
Or if you think the scientists who say that sugar don't affect kids' behavior are crap, feel free to comment below.
We got a bone to pick with you.
Who?
Yeah, I think that's it for us today.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, old wives' tales. A lot of them have some fact to them. Some of them maybe based in something else, like you said about the Gatorade. Like the Gatorade can help, but really it's about hydration or electrolytes.
Right. And some things we just don't know yet, right?
True. So true. If you're a philanthropist looking for a cause, let's talk about preeclampsia. You can email me. I'll give you my cell phone number. You can call me.
Yeah, we'll shift the whole parent trip.
Solving preeclampsia. Oh man. Okay. Everybody have a good day and let us know your old wives' tales that were a part of your experience.
All right. Bye.
Beep, beep. Beep, beep. Thanks for watching. If you liked our channel, please make sure that you hit the button at the bottom and subscribe so you don't miss any other videos we have coming up.
If you want to know the moment we post, hit that little bell.
Ding, ding. We're also on Facebook and Instagram
at The Parent Trip PDX.
And we have a Patreon that we'd love you to check out.
Keeping our content free and accessible for all families is really important to us. So the Patreon is one way that you can help us keep creating content and doing this for a long time.
Thanks.